Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. This week we're going to start putting together the Scania 770S cab. It's all been painted and had plenty of time to harden up, so we can get stuck in. There's a few mods and upgrades to add as we go, and there's one or two bits that we're still going to skip so we can run the wires later, but we'll be putting 95% of it together. This week though, I'm yet again trying to put together the video on a Saturday afternoon, so I'll keep it fairly short and continue next time. Anyway, the bottom of the cab is in black, and then we have a Ford electric blue stripe with a fancy bit out the front. I tried the Tamiya masking tape for curves for the first time, which went rather well. There's a couple of tiny wisps of the darker colour in the bright blue, but it came out pretty good. At the top we have Ford Ocean Blue, which I didn't realise was metallic. I started painting, saw the sparkles and thought, well, I might as well keep going. And I must say it really does have some sparkle when it's out in the sun. The back of the cab is just plain black, but I didn't bother trying to get the lacquer to gloss up, so it's well protected but decidedly matte. But I like the contrast in the texture, so I'll leave it as it is. Right, first up we're on to step 52, the door handles and the chrome strips. The handles just drop into recessed holes in the doors. Now I've painted them matte black along with all the other black parts. I've also added the little chrome stickers on the handles. So all we do is, after a camera angle change, is add a few spots of poly cement, keeping in mind we really don't want it to ooze out around the edges, so we don't need to use very much at all. Then we just drop the handle in and position it. Below the window we have a chrome strip. It runs along the bottom edge and has a step on the rear to help get the position just so. But it's still a bit vague, so I'm going to wait until we have the chrome trim that goes around the rear window installed so we can get everything spot on. Once the door handle is grabbed, we can carefully flip the cab over and glue in the other one. It'll take a good while before the bond is strong, so be extremely careful. Then we can put the cab upright and leave it alone while we get on with something else. Step 53, mirrors. We have U2 and 3, the housings, N8 and 9, the main mirrors, and N15 and 16, the blind spot mirrors. The housings have been painted gloss black, so all we need to do is glue the mirrors in. Now, they don't self-position all that well in the housings, so get some practice by getting them in the right spot before going anywhere near the glue. They don't sit fully inside the housing, so they can be a bit tricky. Also, following the manual, we should paint the edges of the mirrors too, but I think the chances of making a mess are fairly high, so I'm going to leave them as they are. We can apply a little bit of poly cement so the glue is just under the edge of the housing. Then we drop a mirror in. Not the easiest, and I did manage to get a tiny smear of glue on one of the blind spot mirrors. It mostly cleaned up after a wipe with some alcohol, but what's left won't notice unless it's pointed out, so it'll do. Stick all four in and we can leave them to harden up. Step 54, fitting the mirrors and the side windows. We need 4 M2x12 cap heads, 4 M2x10 cap heads, 8 M2 nuts and 2 2mm washers. Then there's S1 and S2, the rear windows, which I fully blacked out by painting them on the inside. There's S4 and 5, the door windows, and U16, 17, 18 and 19, the mirror mounts. There's also L7, the blank that blanks a hole on the back of the cab for the Tamiya trailer wiring harness. We're not going to be using the Tamiya kit, but I do have a plan for the hole, so I'm not going to be fitting L7. The mirrors go on with the small mount at the top using 2 M2x10s, and at the bottom with the large mount and 2 M2x12s. The mirror housing has little round bits at the ends that slot into the mounts, and when it's all tightened up they lock into place. For now it's all a bit loose and wobbly, so if you're not careful it will all fall apart. Next we can spin the cab around so it's up the right way and offer up the window. It has 3 holes and a slot that go over the screws. So we hold the screws in position and slide the window in. Next we can thread a nut onto the 2 bottom screws, just barely taking up the slack. We still want things to be able to settle into position. Then at the top, frontmost screw, we need another nut, and then the last screw is a bit more fiddly as it needs the washer and then a nut, as the window has a slot rather than a hole. I'm not sure why it has a slot, but it does. Once all 4 nuts are in, we can go around and nip them up properly, although we will need to loosen the lower screws a bit to fit the chrome strip in the next step. Next we fit the rear windows. We just use a couple of strips of the thin double-sided tape from the kit. Peel off the backing and carefully offer it up to the cab. You can reach through from the inside and line it up before pressing it down into place. Repeat with the other side, and that's the side windows in. Step 55, the chrome window strips. This would also include the aero, but I've already fitted them off camera. We did cover all that a couple of videos ago though. To fit the chrome, we'll need the cab on its side, but we have the mirrors now, so we need to use a box to space the cab from the bench, with a cloth on the top to protect the paint. Then we move the camera up so we can actually see what we're doing. Around the rear window we have the curved strip. Now if we pop it into place, we can see where the end comes, so we can line up the straight strip for the front. The front strip goes in under the lower mirror mount, so we need to loosen the screws a bit first. Just a couple of turns so we've got a bit of clearance. Now we can do a test fit to get an idea of where the parts want to sit. When we're happy, we can remove them and add a little bit of poly cement. As usual, we need to use a small amount of the glue so it doesn't all ooze out and make a mess. I'm going to do one bit at a time and start with the straight bit. Then add some glue around the rear window and add the rear chrome. Now as long as you're fairly quick, you will have enough time to slightly adjust the positions before the glue really starts to grab. Just be gentle, you don't want to completely break the bond and shove the parts across the window. Just use some gentle pressure to persuade the parts to move. Same goes with the other side of course, just a mirror image. Then we'll leave the cab to dry before doing anything else. Then of course we can retighten the screws when it's all nice and stable. Step 56, the windscreen, on which I've painted the lower strip with some black paint, but looking at the later bits of the build you could probably get away without the paint, as most of the strip gets covered up by the plastic scuttle above the grille. Right, to fit we need 2 M2x8s, 2 black 2x6 self-tappers and 2 M2 nuts. First, since this is a good half an hour after the last step, we can nip up the mirror screws. Then we flip the cab so it's bottom up and we can insert the windscreen. It's a bit of a fiddle getting it past the screws, but it will go in without any force. But looking at it later, I think it might just be possible to insert it from the outside, but I haven't tried it. Once it's in, we can turn the cab face up, line up the windscreen and install the 2 self-tappers. Right now they just want to be tight enough to stop the windscreen from falling out, but still let it move so we can line up the top holes. Now we insert the M2 screws up from the inside so they go through the tabs in the windscreen and through the cab. Hold them in place and spin on a nut. Position the windscreen so it's even along the top and tighten them up. Tighten the self-tappers at the bottom and that's the windscreen installed. Next we're onto the roof, but I'm going to use that as a bit of an excuse as it's a separate sub-assembly, so a good time to cut the video. Hopefully next week we can complete the cab and get it on the chassis. I don't like doing these short videos, but here we are. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching, like if you like, subscribe if you haven't, and leave a comment if there's something on your mind. Bye guys!